Hello, everybody. Welcome or welcome back to Tiny Tiger Collective. It's been a whole year in my Hobonichi Cousin 2024 Spring Start, and I'd love to share with you my experiences and reflections as I spent the past 12 months experimenting with a one-book planner system and the lessons that I've learned that I would like to take into the rest of 2025 and 2026. I was first introduced to Hobonichi planners back in 2023. At that time, it was already July, and rather than purchase a regular January start Techo and have 6 months unused at the start of the book, I decided to purchase an April spring start so that I would be able to start journaling right away with only a couple of months blank in the beginning. From 2023, I kept this A6 Techo as a daily journal for my son when he was around 6 months old to a year and a half. And it became a really precious space in which I could document all of his milestones and the small but significant memories that we wanted to treasure for many years to come. We ended this book with a holiday together in Japan, and I decided to enter 2024 instead by upgrading to the Hobonichi Cousin so that I would have not only the space in here to journal about my son, my family, but also to have the space to keep all of the records of my life, whether it be my work or my personal interests, hobbies, and all the things that I needed to keep track of in my day-to-day life. So before I pick this book up at the end of March last year, I spent so many hours on the PlannerTube community watching as many videos as I could to gain the inspiration on how to work with a Hobonichi Cousin. I followed everyone from Helen of the Coffee Monsters Co., Megan Rhiannon, Theory of Lauren, Elle's Books, Tori on Paper, Helena Diana, just to name a few. So I'm not kidding when I said I really learned everything that I could about keeping a Hobonichi Cousin and followed in the steps of all the creators who have made their own interpretations and taken their own spin on how they use each of the unique spreads in this book. I still maintain that Hobonichi Cousin videos remain some of my favorite planner videos to watch because of the rich variety of the spreads. When it comes to Hobonichi planners, it can often seem as though the Hobonichi Cousin is the most creative because there is so many diverse ways that people are able to draw, paint, decorate, hand letter, and collage through each spread. In fact, some of my favorite Hobonichi Cousin creators are also professional artists, such as AstroCat Draws, Amy Yor, and Mina Pomelo. Everyone that I've named, I would be thrilled to link in the video description so that you can fall down the same rabbit holes as I did, watching and learning from the incredible examples of artists and creators who have made magic with their Hobonichi Cousin. So in 2024, I decided to experiment with having a one-book system because hypothetically, I thought it would give me the convenience of only needing to keep and carry one book with me where it captured all of my tasks, events, appointments, responsibilities, and put it all neatly into the one place. However, if you've watched some of my other videos, you would know that this didn't quite work out in reality. And within a couple of months of keeping this planner, I realized that it felt less organized and more chaotic. It bothered me that I would have beautiful memory keeping spreads next to talking about needing to do laundry that week, or beside a venting entry all about my stresses at work. It was particularly the emotional venting that I did within these pages that made me feel less incentivized to keep this book as a treasured archive. But instead, I really wanted to recycle this book at the end of the year so that I could release some of the negative emotions that I had poured out onto these pages. So I began very strong in this book. You'll see here that even though the planner starts on the 1st of April, the monthlies actually begin in February. I was in Kyoto at the time, and I was so excited to crack open this book, and I backfilled 2 months worth of my absolute highlights and favorite events on each day. I was traveling around Japan and collecting beautiful washi tape. This one's by Shinji Kato. I've got here a little slogan that I pulled out of the Traveler's Company gift bag. I've got here a writable sticker that I purchased from a 100 yen shop. And here is a little logo from a traditional Japanese sweet store that I tore out from the packaging after eating sakura mochi from that shop virtually every single day in April. I really love the way that my spread looks. But after keeping up with this for a few months, unfortunately, I did end up losing steam in the second half of August. One thing that I love the most about my monthly spreads was having the space on the left-hand column. And I believed I followed from the inspiration of Theory of Lauren, who reflects at the end of each month on something she is celebrating, learning, releasing, welcoming, and inspired by. I think her prompts are a little bit different from mine. I can't remember off the top of my head what exactly Lauren uses for her prompts, but I recall adapting some of the ones that she had, maybe omitting some of her categories into one that I felt worked the best for me. And although my monthlies were time consuming to keep up with, I really loved coming back at the end of every week to write down the highlights of each day and to come back and reflect on these introspective yet generative prompts at the end of every month. This has to be one of the spreads that I missed keeping the most. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to come back to this time commitment and continue this practice. And indeed, it's really only at the end of this planner journey that I can look back and really appreciate this spread for giving me a gentle space to celebrate everything that I had done. Now, if I can go back, I did also have plans for using the yearly pages as an index. So I like the idea of, in one short sentence, capturing what each entry was about. And that, I felt, was able to give me the space to come back to easily refer to memories or events if I wanted to read over my documentation ever again. However, because I had decided that I didn't want to keep this book for the long term, and I wanted to recycle this book at the end of the year, along with the spaces where I vented and released some of my challenges and difficulties, I no longer had the incentive to use this space as an index because I never wanted to archive this book and have a place to refer back to individual pages. It was fun, however, to also spend a little bit of time decorating the bottom. And again, most of these are from packaging, stickers, and washi tape that I picked up while I was in Japan. If you had asked me 12 months ago which spread I was most excited to use the Hobonichi Cousin for, I would have told you that it was the weekly spreads. Many of the artists and creators I named earlier are absolutely creative geniuses when it comes to their weekly pages. Many of them use beautiful hand lettering, stickers, and doodles to create an exquisite page that is such a beauty to behold. I've followed in the steps of a mix of different creators, and again, I started the book off strong. Here at the top, in pencil, I noted the high and the low of the temperature, as well as a little icon to show what the weather was planning to be that day. And I generally would try and fill this in a week in advance so that I could, at the time, plan my holidays accordingly based on whether it was going to be rain or shine. I have a sleep tracker along the side here, and I did find that quite useful to be able to follow my sleep because I experience sleep maintenance insomnia. So it's very helpful when I can track when that's occurring and when I've been lacking the rest that I need. You can also see that I took advantage of the fact that I was in such a stationery heaven and I was purchasing these little planner stickers in almost every shop we went to. And I had plenty of stickers to decorate these pages. But I also found that I struggled a lot with deciding how I was going to mix and match the different stickers of each spread. So you'll see here I have stickers from different sticker packs. I will have a glossy vinyl sticker. I will have here a washi sticker with foil elements. And then here I will have a matte vinyl sticker with foil elements. And what I found was that while the many creators I could see were making beautiful spreads with stickers, when I was mixing stickers from different designs, they often clashed on the page and they didn't look as cohesive as so many of the videos that I had seen. Another thing that I really enjoyed doing was keeping here underneath my sleep tracker a log of what I was reading that week, what I was watching that week, included any YouTube channels I was binging at the time, and what I was listening to. And so listening could have been anything from an album I had on repeat, but sometimes it was ASMR, which I got really into at that time, particularly to help me through long hours of insomnia in the middle of the night. I won't flip through the rest of my weekly pages because they are quite sensitive. I indeed started this book long before I thought of starting my YouTube channel at the end of 2024. So I was quite open about using full names, locations, times. And so I'm going to stop the flip through of the weekly pages here, but only just to show you that I started giving up on the weekly pages around August, not unlike when I stopped using the monthly pages. And they also got more and more rough. So I very quickly lost interest in drawing the connecting lines between the dots of when I marked my sleep durations. So I just really started cutting back. I stopped tracking the weather. It was all too time consuming, and I was barely keeping in touch with time blocking and noting my events, meetings, and appointments. I also noticed that the spaces in between were very small for me. So I might only do something for half an hour, but it would take me 2 lines, which is an hour in this space, to write exactly what was happening during that time. When I was traveling across different time zones, that was also really tricky how I was going to adapt this weekly spread. So there were a lot of things about the weekly spread that were so exciting and hopeful in theory. But once I actually got through the reality of filling out the weekly spread page by page, they just didn't work for me and also the way that I currently structure my days. So by December and January, these pages were also sadly abandoned. Abandoned, but hopefully not go to waste, because every now and then I do cherish having a little bit of a blank page in order to swatch some fountain pen inks or do a pen test, and sometimes even do a quick reflection and a log of something that I'm reading or thinking about or taking notes at a particular seminar or lecture. So always, whenever I have a chance to use this beautiful Tomoe River paper, I try not to leave any pages to waste. All right. So April the 1st began, and I was flush with so much time on holidays in Kyoto. And whenever my son was taking a nap or he went down for bedtime, we were staying in a house that had an upstairs room where I would be able to steal away and do a little bit of collaging and really pour into my journals. So I did a little collage with the brochures that we had collected on our travels thus far. There's little pieces that have been torn out of the menus that we were given at our ryokans when we had our kaiseki dinners. And as we traveled through Kyoto, we also collected business cards, little logos from receipts, and all of that gave me an abundance of ephemera and decorative elements that I could use to fill out my spreads. I began this book using my platinum carbon black ink within a Pilot Vanishing Point black wood that I had actually purchased a couple of weeks prior in Tokyo. I'd actually knew that I wanted to pick up a vanishing point, and over planning as I do, I actually brought along a sample vial of platinum carbon black from home so that once I got my new pen, I would ink it up using the sample vial that I had brought, and that I would begin journaling using that ink with this pen. The subheadings here in lilac were written with Sailor Yozakura ink in my Pilot Custom 823, which I also purchased at the same time as this vanishing point at the Ameyoko market in Tokyo. Very quickly, I found that my vanishing point was a lot better in theory than it was in practice. Paired with my platinum carbon black, I found it all too dry, and I was getting a lot of issues with skipping or hard starts, and it really wasn't as an enjoyable of a writing experience as I had hoped. And my hands were cramping up so hard as I was filling out these pages, as I was also adjusting to the fact that I was writing a lot more than I was used to when I previously kept the Hobonichi A6 Techo. Nevertheless, I persevered. As I continued traveling through Japan, I filled up page after page of all the wonderful memories that we were creating with our son while taking him on his first overseas holidays as a 19-month-old baby. I had every intention of decorating these books and holding on to this book as a treasured archive for the long term. I've got tickets for when we went to Tokyo Skytree, and right at the top there was a photographer, and I really couldn't help myself. I usually find these things a little bit silly, but there was a photographer who took our picture on what was a green screen carpet, and then the view from the top of the Skytree would be superimposed on the computer. And the photographer at that time was this young Japanese man who was so friendly with my son that I could not believe when he showed us the photo that he captured, how happy my son looked in that photo, that I had to purchase this. And so I actually printed out the digital file that we were given along with the photographic print. Once I returned to Australia, the reality of keeping day to day in this book while working a full-time job and chasing after an increasingly energetic toddler really started to form cracks in my plan. Nevertheless, I persevered. And one thing that I was happy to find was that by around May or June, after 1 or 2 months within this book, my hand did adjust to writing such long pages of entries in the A5 size. So while at the beginning I thought, gosh, what did I get myself into? My hands were cramping after just a paragraph or two in here. I really did build up the strength in my hand. I got used to my pen, and it became easier and more efficient to journal in these long pages. That said, I do still block out the left-hand column. Every morning I'll draw a tarot card that guides me towards thinking about ways in which I could nourish myself for that particular day. Perhaps an invitation or an opportunity to focus on certain values that have been neglected. I would also write one intention for the day. So that is one thing that if that's all I did for the day, I would consider it an accomplishment. So it could be teach a class, it could be spend quality time with my family, but it could also be to take some me time and pour back into myself. I began by writing an affirmation, although I admit for many months, the word affirmation didn't quite sit right with me. So here I write what is quite a common loving meditation that says, may I be happy, may I be safe, may my heart be at peace. Sometimes I might repeat that affirmation every single day for multiple weeks. Other times I might feel like I need different guiding words to see me through a particularly rough season. So I might invent a new affirmation or find something through the many guided meditations and mindfulness practices that I draw upon in my day-to-day life. Then last but not least, I will always write something that I'm grateful for that day. Usually, I fill out these spreads in 2 different sessions. So first thing in the morning, 7:30, 8 o'clock before I start work, I'll come over here to my writing desk. I will draw my tarot card. I will reflect on the meaning of the card I've drawn. I will write my intention and I will write my affirmation. I'll write the heading for gratitude, but I actually fill out the gratitude the following day. So at that point, I wouldn't write my gratitude first thing in the morning, but I would write what I'm grateful for on the previous day. And it might be a happy memory that we made in that evening or right before I went to sleep. So I can reflect back on the previous day and find one thing that captures what I'm truly grateful for. I also have a running list of tasks. So these could be meetings and events. So here I had a workshop with Kamal Samar, who ran a really fantastic workshop all about how to have meaningful meetings. I would also talk about what I needed to do that day, whether it is to get the flu vaccine or read a book to advance a certain theory that I was writing about in my day job. As the weeks went on, I really did struggle with a combination of using the Pilot Vanishing Point and the Platinum Carbon Black. I really did try to give it a good go, but I was struggling so hard with the dryness of the ink that it made writing more painful than pleasurable. So it was around this time when I made the decision that I didn't want to keep this book anymore. It was too chaotic, and I just wasn't satisfied with how a one-book system was working for me. By then, I had made the mental decision that in 2025, I would move into a multi-book system in order to experiment with compartmentalizing all the different areas of my life into their own book. And oddly enough, it was in making the decision that I wasn't going to treat this as some sort of museum-worthy archival piece that I actually started having fun in my Hobonichi Cousin. So here you can see an example of when I started experimenting with different pens. So while I was really committed to sticking with my Pilot Vanishing Point and Platinum Carbon Black, I also allowed myself to try out the Lamy 2000 inked with Pirate Iroshizuku Kirisame, another wonderful purchase from Tokyo. This combination of a beautiful nib and a wet ink was an absolute delight to write with, and it really highlighted for me how important it was that I choose instruments that I truly treasure, not simply because I had some pre-planned idea of what would look the most uniform and cohesive within my books. Here I started playing with the Sailor Yozakura that I had been using as a subheading only, and seeing how it felt to write with it in my Pilot Custom 823 as a general page spread. And I found this pen so much more comfortable to use and hold for long writing sessions, while the nib seems to show off shading inks in a particularly beautiful and rich way. I got creative with using my son's stickers. Whenever he shared his sticker books with me, I would put something in here. I believe this is my Platinum 3776 Century Kanazawa foil. This was another pen that I struggled a lot with, a very scratchy nib. But nevertheless, when I first purchased this pen, I was excited to ink it up. I believe I put the standard blue cartridge inside to try it out, and that's what I was experimenting with. My son went to a birthday party, and as part of his favors, he received these little animal stickers, which I put in here as well. And yes, it kind of looks less neat than it was when I started the year, but this is when I actually just started to relax and have fun with my book and experiment. See, I use a gel pen over here, which is quite stark when you see it next to the much less saturated and vibrant inks that I use in my fountain pens. This is a season of my life that I wanted to celebrate shading inks in all their glory. So Yozakura in the Pilot Custom 823 and Kirisame in Lamy 2000. Moving into October, I also played around with my Sailor Shikiori Dragon Palace, inked up with Diamine Celadon Cat. So this is really my shading inks era. This one is the pen that I'm using now in my A6, Sailor Shikiori Meigetsu, inked with Rue d'Encre by J. Eban. All of this just having fun with my different inks. This one, I genuinely cannot remember off the top of my head which pen I used, but I'm thinking, oh, I say it right here, my Pilot E95S, inked up with J. Eban's Poussière de Lune. TWSBI Diamond 580 inked up with J. Herbin's Lyre Sauvage. This is when I really started falling in love with my Diamond 580, even though I'd owned it for multiple months. My first impressions was that the pen was too heavy for me, but I did have a much more pleasurable experience using this pen over the course of December. Something about the heat of summer really seemed to complement the richness of this green. Basically, there are no fountain pens that I own that I haven't tried in this Hobonichi Cousin over the course of the last year. This might look like I lost control of my pen, but it was actually me journaling on this Saturday and my son coming over and being so excited to see what I was doing. He was mesmerized, and I gave him the opportunity, supervised of course, to hold my pen and to have a bit of a go drawing on these pages. I am very keen to penable him and have him inherit all of my fountain pens and notebooks. Over Christmas, I stopped journaling in these pages because I wanted to focus more on actually making memories with my family than writing about them. So I started using these pages for planning sketches and designs. Finally, we come to the start of 2025, and that's when I move into the multi-book system that I wanted to experiment with in the new year. I have been keeping an A6 Techo in order to journal about my toddler again. I have 2 Hobonichi weeks, one for my health and wellness tracker and one for my work. Along with the busyness of life, getting sick with a child in daycare, I was really unable to keep up with this book. And a part of me always suspected that that would be the case. So you'll see a lot more empty pages in here. But whenever I needed a good friend to come back to confide in about all my struggles, about the emotions that I was wrestling with, I so enjoyed having a full page in here to be able to release and express all of the things going on within my life and my world. I was in love with this combination, by the way. I inked up my Pilot Custom 823 with J. Herbin, Ombre de Birmanie. For my subheadings though, celebrating the fact that it was summer, I inked up my Traveler's Company brass fountain pen in fine with Diamine Gold Star. And look at this beautiful bottle. This was from the Blue Edition Inkvent all the way back in 2019. But in 2020, all the individual colors were able to be purchased in these full bottles. Look at all the gold shimmer particles at the bottom there. It really surprised me how well a shimmer ink like this one flows out of my brass fountain pen, even though this is a fine nib. So I'm even more excited to try shimmer inks. This is when I started making videos for YouTube. So I became more careful about not writing people's names, not writing sensitive information, but where I felt like I really needed to, because at the end of the day, I'm not a professional planner creator. This is still very much my real life. I would put a little sticky note to cover up the places where it's something I don't want to share online. One thing that became a little bit fun for me to do from mid-February onwards was I started wondering whether or not I had inks in my collection that could complement all the colors of Hobonichi's planner months. So if you're a Hobonichi lover, you know that each of the Hobonichi months comes with a different color. We've got pink for April, maybe a nod to Sakura season. We've got a chartreuse or olive green for May. We've got a more muted kind of sage green for June. We've got a blue for July and a kind of deeper blue, almost heading into violet for August, so on and so forth. I certainly don't have all the colors and I hadn't paid attention to them before, right? So I'm using all different colors and mostly black for the first 4 months of this book. But around February, I decided, well, I have J. Herbin Lit de Thé, so why don't I use this brown ink within these brown monthly spreads? And I found that a lot of fun to match the particular color. So much so that when March rolled around, I decided to continue that and not only match the color, which is Sailor Shikiori Yozakura, but also match the pen, which is my Sailor Ama Oto or Sound of Rain in the winter colorway Tall. I have admittedly been following many planner creators who swatch a range of inks in much bigger collections than I have in order to find the perfect matches for each of the Hobonichi colors. And I confess, I've been watching it and making notes of the ink colors that I would like to buy that match with a particular color. Of course, celebrating when I already own a particular ink and I don't need to go out and purchase another bottle. I don't know if that is something that will be sustainably enjoyable for me or potentially something that wears off after a few months. But if I have the opportunity to grow my ink collection over the remainder of the year, I would be really excited to try an ink matching exercise in 2026. So that brings me to the very last month, and you'll see there are many blank pages, but I am not going to recycle this book just yet. With all of this empty space, I am excited to come back, use this space for note-taking, for analysis, for pen tests and ink swatches. This paper really is precious, and there is no reason for me to throw this away when I can recycle or upcycle many of the pages that I haven't used. This cover is by perhaps one of my favorite artists that designed for the Hobonichi range, and that's Yumi Kitagishi. I'm a very simple woman. If it has cats and it has rabbits, I buy it. But the deep green of this particular background, I think this is the letter set. It's so stunning to me. And all the painted designs continue on within these pockets. So I have here a charm that I bought from Asakusa Temple. I have the artist card. I hear a lot of people on the planner community refer to these as stickers, but unless they know something I don't, I am 99% positive these aren't stickers. I think they are just a slightly thicker piece of paper with information about the artist on the back. If they're stickers, they're the world's best disguised stickers because I haven't been able to figure out how they peel off. I also have a couple of photographs of my son, my family, that I've printed using my Instax Mini Evo, and I love tucking them into the pockets. Another thing that I have in the back is one of the A5 folders from Yumi Kitagishi's folder collection. So I believe this one came in a set of 2. And I like to have this. Oh, I didn't even remember I have the Swallow Win Art sticker sheet. So there's a little Christmas themed one. And I still have a few stickers left that no doubt will come in handy when it comes to Christmas this year. But usually when I travel, I like to tuck all of my receipts in here, and then I'll scan them and keep them for tax or reimbursement records once I get back to the home. So it is with quite a bit of sadness that I say goodbye to my Hobonichi Cousin 2024 Spring Start. I have learned so much about myself, not least of all that I can get really carried away with pre-planning and invent in my head the most romanticized idea of how I'm going to use a planner months before I even go and purchase it. So for the remainder of the year, I plan to be much more intentional and deliberate with my planners. I've also learned that just because I don't like something after the first week or even the first month of use doesn't mean that I can't change or adapt my mindset or my practices around it. So when I've faced struggles in my current planners, I haven't given up or called quits overall, because I know that sometimes even the decision to not treasure this book in the original way that I intended to archive it for years to come could be exactly the shift in thinking that I need to relax and have fun and find new ways to cherish this planner. I have been more patient and more compassionate with myself as I figure out my new planning system. But it is in the grief of saying goodbye to this Hobonichi Cousin that I've somewhat committed within my heart, even though we're only at the end of March, to purchase another Hobonichi Cousin in 2026. Now, in order for me to overcome the hurdles that I faced in keeping this book, in particular, feeling like everything was chaotically mixed together, where chores and venting about stress was placed next to beautiful collages about my travels and family vacations, what I think I will do is to keep a Hobonichi Cousin in 2026 as my main planner, but to also purchase another Hobonichi A6. This is the one I'm using in 2025, but I would love to expand my collection of these lovely sweet books and journal about my son in these pages, while keeping this for mostly my experiences and reflections relating to my personal life. Now that my son is 2.5, turning 3 later this year, it has become infinitely easier mothering. In the newborn months, it was all about doing everything I can to keep him alive, even if that meant foregoing a shower or a toilet break for me. But he's becoming more independent by the week, more expressive, more self-sufficient, and more free. And it's also given me time, as much as I grieve how close we were in those newborn months, it's given me the space to rediscover who I am again, particularly in a way that allows me to celebrate a long-cherished hobby and passion such as stationery, journaling, and writing. So in 2026, I hope that I may be able to move back into a Hobonichi Cousin, have an A6 Techo as a daily toddler book to really separate out those family memories and milestones that I want to treasure for decades to come, but also grabbing a traveler's notebook refill, one of my unopened Hobonichi notebooks, or a Midori notebook where I can have the space to vent about all the stress and all the challenges and struggles that I'm facing in my day-to-day life. When I was around 16 years old, a good friend of mine gave me a guided journal at the time that was called a Blue Days journal. There were black and white photographs of sweet animals, and there were prompts throughout all the pages, all printed in blue ink, about nourishing the parts of yourself that were suffering through loss, grief, and sorrow. I would love to use my notebooks towards such an aim and have a separate book with a space for me to release all of the emotions that are weighing me down, but to have the option at the end of the year to recycle those books so I can truly let those struggles go. There's something about wanting to keep my Hobonichi Cousin full of all the things that spark joy. And while I know that real life is bittersweet, and there is a lot that I gain and value from reading back on my struggles and challenges, my anxieties, and also see how I've overcome them. To read back and think, gosh, I don't even remember being so stressed out about that thing that turned out to be a non-issue. Yet there's something about having my Hobonichi that I want it to be a space that makes me smile, irrespective of whatever page I flip open. Thank you so much for joining me in this in-depth reflection and discussion of the lessons that I've learned in 12 months within this gorgeous Hobonichi Cousin Spring Start. I would love to hear about what journals you've been using over the last year, whether or not you've learned anything about yourself and your planner and journaling needs, and how you may have adapted or refined your system over time. If you use and or love Hobonichi Cousins, I would be so grateful if you could share some of your favorite planner content creators in the comments below. I will share mine in the video description, but I am always looking forward to seeing how other people interpret these spreads and these spaces and truly make it their own. If you're a content creator, please don't hesitate to also share links to your YouTube channel or social media. Thank you again for being here, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Have a wonderful week until then.